well, I should just start by introducing the panelists. So I'll start down the end with Yao, who has given us a brief introduction. So thanks again for hosting. Is there anything else you want to add to?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. All right. So Yao's down the end there. Paula, do you want to give a quick précis of?
Great. Thanks. Bala Mullah. I'm the operations manager at the business incubator at Polytechnic Institute of NYU. I merged with NYU over the summer. And I'm here because we have a few tenants here, Herman and Roman, who are both virtual tenants with us. Our incubator has been in existence since 2003, and we were initially formed to help commercialize research. But in the last 2 years, we pretty much opened up to any entrepreneur in New York City centric who wanted to start companies. So, and we try to take the definition of an incubator more than just office space, but more creating a network of connections, access to VC funds, marketing sales network, everything around starting a business, not just office space. We believe office space is a given, facilities are a given. We want to build a whole network, and that's where we also have some outsourcing panels to look at, and that's one of the reasons I'm going to talk more on this.
Great, thanks. So Shashir, do you want to give us an introduction of your? Shashir actually has his own. You manage the whole outsourcing company. An excellent panelist to actually talk about, the whole entire process for offshore.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I am Shishir Dhanani. I am President and CEO of IdeaWeight Solutions. Our company IdeaWeight Solutions is an ISO 9001 certified company. Typically, we work with early stage companies as well as growth stage product companies, and we often work with entrepreneurs who have brilliant ideas to build the next Microsoft, and they need help with actually developing the product. So we help them do the entire end-to-end product development as well as QA and testing for the software products. All this we do from our offshore development center in India. And prior to founding IdeaWeight Solutions, me and the other two co-founders of the company, we all used to work for India's largest software services company called Infosys Technologies. You might have read about them in Tom Friedman's book, The World is Flat. So that's a brief about my background. I've been talking at a lot of panel discussions on different topics, one of them being outsourcing. I also have represented our company and spoken at Quality Assurance Institute on different testing technologies and methodologies. So feel free to shoot your questions to me as you would like to get out.
Thanks. On the program we had Taylor Smith. Taylor Smith? Yes, Taylor Smith.
Yeah.
But Javier is actually filling in for him tonight, or filling in his behalf. So you want to give a bit of a spiel of?
Sure. I'm one of the managing partners of the Suppliers Group. What we do essentially is we help folks start companies. What does that mean? There are a lot of folks out there who have the ideas, have the resources, have the industry expertise, but don't have the risk appetite like a lot of us here or the time to execute on their ideas. And so they need a little bit of work on the earliest stage, the development work. So whether that's market diligence or finding suppliers or purely doing a lot of the industry research to figure out what the capital requirements are to launch their business. That's where we come in, and then we look for folks like everybody else in this room who have the fire and the passion to actually execute on the businesses and run with them. In return, we take an equity stake in their business, and we turn to retain all their good work. Through our work, we outsource a lot of this research and development work abroad, and that's a little bit of what I can share with you guys in terms of outsourcing.
Great, thank you. And last, Randy, who's come from the Heady Mines in Boston. So, please give us an introduction.
Sure. My name is Randy Wilburn. I am the owner of the Wilburn Group, as well as a broker for Randy Wilburn and Company Realtors. That's my vocation by trade. I've been a real estate broker for about 7 or 8 years. Ran into Graham. I guess he read an article about me in Business Week, and the reason why I'm really here to talk is specifically about outsourcing as it relates to some of my experiences that my wife and I both had as a, quote, mom and pop of a middle America, starting our own businesses, and basically looking outside of the borders of the United States for additional help. My wife has an organic baby food company, and we utilize individuals in India for help with graphic design, website design, I also operate, as I just mentioned, basically an ideas company where we help small business entrepreneurs to build their brand, to work with them on a speaking level to make sure that they're able to communicate exactly what they're trying to do. And our focus is to help people succeed. And so I'm also working with a couple of startups locally in the Boston area. One platform that we're working on right now is think of a multiple listing service from a real estate perspective on a worldwide basis that has an investor application to it. Something that we really haven't seen because multiple listing services tend to be fragmented both here in the States as well as elsewhere in the world. And we're working on a platform where we could possibly merge those into a much bigger machine that would be able to allow people in the UK to look for property in Argentina and for people in Argentina to look for property here in New York and vice versa. So we're working on those applications and many others. But I'm just excited. For the last year and a half, I've utilized outsourcing with a considerable amount of success. I've made some mistakes with several zeros on the end, and I'm basically here to kind of share with you some of the things to look out for and some ways to help you to really distinguish exactly what you need to outsource, maybe what you don't need to outsource, as well as ways to kind of create a model through which you get that information over to the individuals that you're going to secure for business. Because one thing I've found is that you can really waste a lot of time in outsourcing if you don't know exactly what you want. So.
Which is a great segue into just starting what we want to talk about. The first thing I'd like to know is who in the audience would like something done on a project that doesn't have resources right now? Okay, so half of you and the other half didn't put your hand up. So who here has actually used an outsourcing group via a website, not an entire outsourcing company, but have actually put up the specification and got work done at one of the sites we've been talking about, like Elance and Rent-A-Coda and so forth. So 3, 4, or 5 of you. So I guess before we want to start, pick one thing that was good about it and one thing that wasn't good about it, and we can use that as an input into the panelists here to see if we can get some feedback and discussion on what worked. So you want to kick off? What was the best thing that came out of? Who did you use and what was the best?
I've used Get a Freelancer and Odesk. Get a Freelancer for graphic design and logo design and that sort of stuff, and Odesk for my Python backend development and database design. And the best thing is, I guess there's a few best things that tie for best.
Just pick one.
They all tie for best. Okay. I mean, pricing is a good one. Like obviously.
And the worst?
Well, the worst is that unreliability. That one day someone can just decide they're moving on to leave my project.
Very good segue into something we're going to talk about. Fire away. Oh, you were. Come on.
But I can,
yeah, sure. What was the?
I mean, I guess similar. Pricing is obviously, I think, one of the main reasons why people go to outsourcing, and just the, supply, which is so many people. If you go outside, U.S. borders, literally to do work. But reliability was really tough, and it was really hard finding people who would simply follow instructions. You'd set very clear instructions. If you're used to seeing followed very closely within U.S. borders, and then when you go outside U.S. borders, you just run into these different cultural issues and different ways of working.
Exactly. So, which was a very good point. One of the problems that people have is actually the whole cultural boundary, where we live in a free society where if you have a developer here, they'll actually get up and ask a question or question you or think that they know more than you. Where different societies, they won't actually, they'll just, they'll nod virtually nod their heads and just, take what you say, but they won't actually question or offer up expertise or collaborate like you think. So it's actually one of the problems in terms of the cultural boundary. So, yes. So can you give us the website that you've used and...
I used Freelance, Odesk,
Okay.
What I have found, and I've also been on Linksat because I've also ran sales for a company that did outsource development, is that the best projects are smaller projects, or things that you have to manage. Really, you've got to talk to somebody every day. Because if you don't, it just takes forever.
think there was one other.
Yeah.
Do I get a free free shirt, by the way?
So I've done 4 or 5 separate projects, websites, with freelance and websites. I'd say one of the best things that I would happen to mention is that compared to a lot of people trying to find a student that would just code for free, you can actually get really talented people overseas that will get work done much quicker than your friend who's studying computer science at college.
Sure.
So these are some of the best things about it. One of the worst things is it's just purely the communication and having to really completely develop your entire specification up front and saying, this is what I want, like here's exactly how all the screenshots are going to look, like because I've already figured out everything. If you don't do that sometimes, you never know what you're going to get, and it's not what you ask for, and then renegotiating contracts, you change your work, and that's
So one of the things you're talking about is really effectively scope creep. So you think you've specified something out and you thought it was right and it didn't end up wasn't interpreted the right way, so scripts. Anyway, we actually have some experts here, so let's get onto those. I just wanted to get a feel because we all know about the problems, and the number one reason it seemed to be that the reason why people choose outsourcing was cost. And from experience with actually dealing with outsourcing companies, it ends up not actually saving you a lot of money unless what happens is the time is actually spent in other areas rather than actually getting productivity out. And I think Randy has some tips in terms of like where best to invest your money. You want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, you're exactly right. I mean, you end up in, originally when I decided to go work with some freelancers and outsource to folks outside of the United States, I figured, hey, well, I essentially had capped myself at about a $400 an hour wage. That's essentially what my time is worth. So I figured, who better than to find somebody else that I could pay maybe between 20 and 40 bucks an hour to do that work and save me a lot of heartache. But the thing that I learned early on, and it like I said, I had a learning curve there, was that you end up being able to find some time or reclaim some time that you would have lost trying to do something yourself. But if you don't control the process and you don't control the objectives that you're trying to work on, you can end up spending a lot of time trying to work through and train that outsourcing individual that you're working with to get them up to speed to be able to do what you want them to do. Sometimes there could be a communication gap. Other times there's just a misunderstanding. Right now, as I mentioned, the MLS project that we're working on, the individual that's over in India is outstanding coder. He really knows what he's doing. The biggest problem that we're finding is a little different than what you were mentioning, is that he's constantly trying to infuse new ideas that are not part of the scope of what we're trying to work on. And he's so talented. So you can run into that too with outsourcing, coders and software specialists. And for us, it's been a real challenge. And it's almost like you're kind of babysitting somebody that's helping you out, and it's like you get to a certain point on the project where you don't want to go back and start over, so you have to continue doing what you're doing. You have to continue following up with them every night. And we're at the point now where every day we have a meeting at 7 p.m. each night to discuss the issues and where things are. And that does become a challenge, and that can become quite cumbersome. On the flip side of that now, I have a VA that I work with that's out of Jerusalem. Love him. There's never any issues. There's no misunderstandings. I have a clear-cut Excel spreadsheet that I use to work with my VA, which I can share with you. It can be something that any one of you could use. I'm sorry? A virtual assistant. Yeah, I'm sorry. Virtual assistant. Yeah, I should say that.
What site did you?
I'm sorry?
What site did you use to find your virtual assistant?
Originally, I used Elance. I used Elance to work with them, established a relationship with this individual. We built trust, and then that relationship went offline from Elance, which a lot of you may end up doing with some of the people that you're introduced with. You'll work with them, you'll get established with them through one of these portals, Elance, Odesk, Rent-A-Coder, and then at some point in time when that relationship becomes crystallized and you're like, well, this is someone I like to work with, then you may take that offline and work something out directly with them. But I would always recommend that you work directly through these portals at first to establish those relationships, because you don't want to be throwing your money out there and then find out, well, this guy's a Romanian, I can't find him. Because, that happened to me early on. So
how many VAs did you have to go through before you found the one that you like?
Five VAs. Two in India, one in the Ukraine, and then I finally found the last two that I use very consistently. They're in Jerusalem, and they both work for the same company.
So actually, just to flip over to Shashir, who, unlike most people in the Web 2.0 world, won't even use an ISO certification or a standard or approach methodology to actually design and develop software. So how would you categorize that in addressing the issues that we have, like in terms of reliability and cost? I mean, how does that, from your perspective, help?
Sure. From what I gather from people who have worked on various websites like Elance, Rent-A-Coder, or Odesk for that matter, is that these websites are good so long as you're looking at outsourcing some small-time projects, like maybe doing some logo design, graphic design, website development, some little bit coding as well, and maybe getting some virtual assistants and things like that. But when it comes to building some complex and sophisticated products, I'm sure a lot of you, the objective of your developing a venture is that go out, get some money from the ventures, build a large company, either go IPO eventually or get acquired by some large company like Yahoo or Google. When you have objective like that in mind, then you better go with somebody who is an established company, who is more mature. Because when you're building out a software product which is enterprise class, or for that matter somebody who's building out a very scalable website like say Facebook or YouTube for that matter, scalability and the architecture of the software product would really come into picture, and that's where a company which has extremely good technical expertise will be able to help you out to pick the right technology, create a right kind of a technology architecture, and help you build the right kind of software which you can take to the market eventually. So I think that's where a mature company would come into picture.
And sorry, Yal's sitting back on here. I know we had a bit of a discussion about, you've started with, I think it was Odesk, and now you sort of you determine the effectiveness of those. So you've seen both sides.
Way back, actually, I used Odesk when they first launched. I found this little thing. Oh, it's kind of interesting. What is this? And I just playing around, had a little thing, threw it out there, and you guys have pretty much mentioned a lot of it. Communication is key, and it's just language barrier, processes, trying to get them to do something. And the best way to do it is writing out very clear functional technical specs, which Graham is running sessions on. The more you can get done orderly for them, the better. And also if you have any graphical sketches and wireframes for them. So it becomes a lot of planning and upfront work. But there are ways to use outsourcing. Also trying to get some references from others who've used certain layers, rather than just go randomly into this area. Odesk seems to be a little better because they have more of these tests that they're doing now. I recently checked up on it because of this panel. So they have these tests that they assess each of the programmers. They have language tests, which is key because you can't really tell until you once get into it, and then start asking them questions they don't understand your questions about. Since we started the company, we kind of moved it out, built our own team out in Asia as well, and that's been interesting. We've got it to work, but it does take a lot of experience. People really know what's going on.
Thanks. So what's actually interesting is Vala was talking before we started in terms of actually using resources here in the university.
Right.
Which university?
Polytechnic Institute.
Polytechnic Institute. And he has quite an interesting approach of resources here. Maybe you want to, how could you leverage the students and even professors that you were talking about?
Great. So, talking of Odesk and Guru, softwares of that nature, or websites, we're trying to create a localized network, of professionals who are available like an Odesk, but in person in New York City. Why go to India or when in the Indian sphere, students who are willing to work for the same rate for you right here in New York City. So the way it works is most of these students are international students, and they can't really work, for our companies, but they can work as on-campus jobs. So what we do is we have the students on our payroll, and for free we give them to the companies to work for them. And so the visa is secure, and they can pretty much do the same kind of work they would do if they were
methodology to actually design and develop software. So how would you categorize that in addressing the issues that we have, like in terms of reliability and cost? I mean, how does that, from your perspective, help?
Sure. From what I gather from people who have worked on various websites like Elance, Rent-A-Coder, or Odesk for that matter, is that these websites are good so long as you're looking at outsourcing some small-time projects, like maybe doing some logo design, graphic design, website development, some little bit coding as well, and maybe getting some virtual assistants and things like that. But when it comes to building some complex and sophisticated products, I'm sure a lot of you, the objective of your developing a venture is that go out, get some money from the ventures, build a large company, either go IPO eventually or get acquired by some large company like Yahoo or Google. When you have objective like that in mind, then you better go with somebody who is an established company, who is more mature. Because when you're building out a software product which is enterprise class, or for that matter somebody who's building out a very scalable website like say Facebook or YouTube for that matter, scalability and the architecture of the software product would really come into picture, and that's where a company which has extremely good technical expertise will be able to help you out to pick the right technology, create a right kind of a technology architecture, and help you build the right kind of software which you can take to the market eventually. So I think that's where a mature company would come into picture.
And sorry, Yal's sitting back on there. I know we had a bit of a discussion about, you've started with, I think it was Odesk, and now you sort of you determine the effectiveness of those. So you've seen both sides.
Way back, actually, I used Odesk when they first launched. I found this little thing. It's kind of interesting. What is this? And I just playing around, had a little thing, threw it out there, and you guys have pretty much mentioned a lot of it. Communication is key. And it's just language barrier, processes, trying to get them to do something. And the best way to do it is writing out very clear functional technical specs, which Graham is running sessions on. The more you can get done orderly for them, the better. And also if you have any graphical sketches and wireframes for them. So you have to become a lot of planning and upfront work. But there are ways to use outsourcing. Also, trying to get some references from others who've used certain layers, rather than just go randomly into this area. Odesk seems to be a little better because they have more of these tests that they're doing now. I recently checked up on it because of this panel. So they have these tests that they assess each of the programmers. They have language tests, which is key because you can't really tell until you want to get into it, and then start asking them questions they don't understand your questions about. Since we've started the company, we kind of moved it out, built our own team out in Asia as well. And that's been interesting. But we've got it to work. But it does take a lot of experience. People really know what's going on.
Thanks. So what's actually interesting is Bala was talking before we started in terms of actually using resources here in the university.
Right.
Which university?
Polytechnic Institute.
Polytechnic Institute. And he has quite an interesting approach of resources here. Maybe you want to, how could you leverage the students and even professors that you were talking about?
Great. So, talking of Odesk and Guru, softwares of that nature, or websites, we're trying to create a localized network, of professionals who are available like an Odesk, but in person in New York City. Why go to India, or when the Indians here, students who are willing to work for the same rate for you right here in New York City. So the way it works is most of these students are international students, and they can't really work, for our companies, but they can work as on-campus jobs. So what we do is we have the students on our payroll, and for free we give them to the companies to work for them. And so the visa is secure, and they can pretty much do the same kind of work they would do if they were in India for you right here. So it's kind of a system where you don't need to go outside the country, and also it helps in just communicating with the students. The people you need are right in New York City. So the idea is to create a sort of a localized network, which we have about 50 to 60 students right now available, and most of our tenants are aggressively hiring. The minimum rate is $10 an hour, it goes up to $25. So that's the we're trying to create an outsourcing connection right here, close by.
Yep,
Are you referring to full-time students or students that are approaching graduation?
Full-time students who are available to work on campus. During the summer, up to 35 hours, and in the schools in session, 20 hours a week.
So do they actually get any credit towards doing this? Or
Yeah, actually we're setting that up. If you're a computer science student, as most students are for this kind of field for Java, C++, we link them up with the professors, and they get academic credit for doing this as well, in addition to being paid. So it's a win-win for the university and the students and the companies.
So one thing that was actually interesting we were talking about, it's not just students, it's even like
professors,
professors as well who are offering their services.
Yeah, that's something I forgot to mention. Now, there are a few professors in search engine technology and databases who, if you approach them, if you're a tenant in our center, you can approach these professors. And it's like the professor getting a research grant. You pay the professors, and professors then hires the students. And the professor takes responsibility to get the project done. So, you have the buffer, but your project manager is a professor, a very high-level person, interfacing with the students, getting the project done, and then giving them the project. So it's a very localized network. That's what we're really stressing on. And also, just to mention one more thing, we have a seed fund in our center called NYC Seed. Now, the primary, this person who's Owen Davis, you probably know of him. One of his main criteria for funding companies is all the development work has to be done locally. He's very New York centric. He wants it to happen in New York. It's called NYC Seed. So, if you have a partner in the city itself who's willing to take over the entire development, it could be a student in the city. He doesn't care as long as the entire thing is done here. So the positioning of the development within the city itself is sort of getting important, and with that reason, we have the resources to do that.
Let's say a company started working with some of your students, and they wanted to offer those students a little bit of equity. Would the school come into play and try to take any kind of...
Not at all. If you're a virtual tenant, we charge a flat $150 fee. Very minimal. We have $1 overhead per student per hour. So if students getting paid 10, for operations, we invoice you $11 an hour. And for the NDA, we have a 3-way NDA, which goes between the student and you and us. So in that case, the student is protected, you are protected, your IP is completely protected, the student is not affected, he's not being abused or anything of that nature. And we're the interface between the two entities. Correct, yeah. The student reports to the project manager at the BEST Center is a poly employee of the university, and that person, actually it's my role, is responsible for interfacing with the professor as well and letting him know that the student needs academic credit and basically keeping track of what the students are up to.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Sure.
Javier, we haven't heard from you actually. You were talking more
Sure.
about the working in the design and specification, which is obviously some of the areas that you really focus on. And do you look at local outsourcing or
So-
remote?
We've actually had experiences both with students abroad and locally, and the one thing I'll say, just to take a step back and frame the discussion a little bit, it's that first you ought to think about what's available out there. You've got the VA world and then the more technical development world, and in both sides of the world you have sort of the very low-end freelancer, the medium-sized service firm, and then sort of the high-end service firms. And because the one thing we found, which was a little bit counterintuitive, is what is listed as a high-end service firm comes in still cheaper than you would get locally. So sometimes while you're looking at your menu of options online, you're better off essentially going with the highest price. You don't get the impression that you're saving money, but when you compare it to a local service, you're a lot better off. The reason for that being is that a lot of the folks there's a firm behind this. It's not somebody who's in Romania who runs away. There's a sense of accountability, there's a little bit more reliability, and so the timing of these folks tends to be pretty good. The other reason for going in this direction that we argue for is that when you're paying a little bit higher dollar, and they know this, they've been ranked at the top of the different databases, and they understand where they sit on the food chain, is that you can use a few tips to get a better product out of them. So your first time you can say, look, I want the person that speaks the best English. I'm going to give you a trial project that's not exactly within your scope. I need you to come back to me within 30 minutes or 45 minutes and show me what you have. I need you to come back to me the next day and show me what you have. So you start training them, engaging their projects a little bit better, and firms are willing to do this to get the foot on the door. in the door. So that's what I would add on that side. On the student front, phenomenal results all around. Just working with local American students is one of the best things we've ever done, both development work and purely industry research work. And these are guys not like anybody else here who are just passionate about what they're doing. They want to get business experience. They're trying to get some sort of an internship on their resume, and they will do anything and everything. And oftentimes it works out a lot better than going abroad. And they, back to the cultural point, they understand what you're looking for if you're going after a particular sector or industry, so they think they're pretty good at this.
Students directly, or is there an incubator at other schools?
No, directly. So, the one thing that people sometimes don't think of, but it's open to everybody, is job boards at any school are open to everybody. Craigslist, Monster, whichever, but you could really target by school, by specialty, by whatever you want. This is open to anyone.
Budgeting their time, I mean, being a student is time consuming in itself.
So, right, so that's what you ought to be mindful of, and what we do is we make it very flexible. What we say is, when we need to get in touch with you, we'll give you a week or two. You want to do it at 2 a.m., that's great. You want to do it during the day, that's phenomenal too. But by this day, we ought to talk about the progress you've made and the results you've had. And it's just amazing. So,
Colin, do you know if other schools have an incubator or something like that, or is that just?
No, not really. I mean, there's an incubator at CUNY, and I know they hire a few students, and I think Stony Brook has an incubator which has a few students, but not too many. The whole concept of incubators, relatively new. They're kind of really coming up now, but I'm not really aware of too many others. But I'm just curious about. So, do you also handle their paperwork and immigration and everything of that sort? If the students are, because most of the students, a lot of internationals. So, how do you?
All the students with that were domestic, so I
okay, so it's a different
speak to that. Yeah.
Because for us, it's primarily international students who are, and they have actually companies in India or Russia who they then outsource to, but they're the point of contact and they are right here locally. So it sort of helps to have a person here.
So we'll just take one question, then over to another topic to ask the panelists.
Yeah, because the students at the university and they're also getting academic credit for this, so they are very keen to kind of be there all the time, and the companies typically appoint a project manager among the students who takes responsibility for communicating with the rest of the students. So it's the one project lead. So it's very much like a course, but designed to kind of get something really built and done. Sorry?
If you get somebody who's not open to away, you get somebody else.
I don't know, get your question.
No, if you've got an intern, let's say you have two design by database.
Right.
Design by database plus something like that.
Yeah, it's business at the end of the day. So if someone's not performing, you're fired. You leave. I mean, so. But I mean, there's a lot of pressure on the students, and the students they know about this when they come into this environment. They can either get a job in the cafeteria for $10 an hour, or work a real job with us in our incubator, and get good stuff on the resume. So it's up to them to take the challenge. But if they don't perform, there's no obligations. I mean, they're fired.
I think if you go in without your expectations being too high, don't raise the bar that high, but just have basic expectations mid-range, and then sometimes you're pleasantly surprised.
My specs are the size of cars. Real simple. A, B, you just have to do it. I mean, I said one guy list of things to do. I did different for 3 days. I said, what are you working with? He goes, which one do you want me to do first? So I've numbered them and something like
Sometimes, I wouldn't say that every time you're going to get somebody bad. I know specifically if we're talking about university settings, I think MIT may have a program set up for incubators, but I know that we hired a couple people through Craigslist at MIT that were very solid. Each one of them did a different phase of the project that we were working on. It was simple work, maybe 2 weeks worth of work for each one of them. They each completed it. We wrote a great letter to their professor with regard to that, and I believe each one of them got credit in their particular coursework for the work that they did with us. So, I mean, it does. I mean, those that are serious about it, they know what the benefits are, short term and long term. And so, if you want to
paint a picture that you're there to help them as well.
To the mic. Can you speak up?
And I get clients all the time that don't know how to develop a spec sheet. And they give me a website, and they give me a couple of things to do, but it's not solid, it doesn't make any sense. Now, I have to go out and tell them, and I have to spend my time, or my project manager's time, who also gets paid, to tell them that you need to read the spec sheet. Now, if the work is delayed by 4 or 5 days, only because they didn't want something that did not list something, they expect you to, implement that too. How are you supposed to implement that? So one thing people don't understand when you hire consultants is that you really need to be solid, and you need to create a proper spec sheet. If you don't create a proper spec sheet, and on your spec sheet, say you had, one page that said it's user registration, and it must have a reset password button. But if you didn't write that, it's not included. I don't know, I need to program that. And if the job was $10,000, which we just recently did for Cypress Recruiting, a firm in New York City, and we wasted around 2 weeks of our time, and we subsidized it only because they don't know how to make a proper spec sheet. And there were dozens of design changes that needed to be re-implemented only because they don't know that they have to tell us this. Now, password reset was not there only because they never mentioned it. It's not intuitive. It's really not.
So how do you know how to write a good spec then? I mean,
I think that's probably a market there for that, because the people that I use, we had somebody specifically, that's what they do. They know how to do that. And so there's never been a glitch in the matrix or something lost in translation with regard to that, because we had someone that they knew how to write that up backwards and forwards. And Yao, you mentioned the wire. What it's called, a wireframe. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not a technological person. I'm just an ideas guy. But the wireframe, and the individual that we hired, he could do that. He could do the wireframe, and there was never a problem as far as that's concerned. But you're right. There's a lot of wasted time with that, because what I have found is that what I'm dreaming and what I'm thinking about in my head and what a coder is looking at are two totally different things. And how do you translate that to them? And so in our case, we had a middleman that spoke his language and understood it. And we trusted that individual to translate to them what we were trying to do.
Yeah. The only problem people usually have is that if you have a pre-existing software application or a website, it's already written in particular code. And this is when we talk about standards. And you mentioned standards. Now, if you want it to be upgraded or you want to add a new feature or functionality to it, you cannot do that without rewriting the old code, only because it may not be up to standards. There's no standards. What are you going to do? Sometimes you see database integration. I'm pretty sure everybody has experience with WordPress. Do that? You know what WordPress is. You know how it installs in the database. You see WP, whatever. Sometimes people can make a custom CMS, which is what WordPress is, and the CMS would use CSS styling within the database. Now, how are you supposed to edit that? A programmer is not going to edit it unless he spends 8 hours looking at the database and then removing it, but that's his time. And you guys expect the programmer to edit it within 10 minutes. But he can't. It's just literally impossible because of bad code and no standards. So even if you have a wireframe or a spec sheet, you need to specify all these things. You need to understand it.
I mean, that's not even an issue of like, there's no standard you can write saying that, the CSS should not be in the database.
Well, it shouldn't.
Right,
that's intuitive.
But you can't put those kinds of things in an official standard. I mean, it's not like an industry standard kind of thing.
That's not what I mentioned. I mentioned redesigning something, or re-implementing something, or adding to an existing infrastructure like he did an MLS software. Now, imagine if his MLS software needed an additional portal, anything at all. And if the programmers that wrote it previously, I don't know who's verifying their code, and who's taking a look at it. Just because it works doesn't mean it's proper code, it's not messy. And if somebody else, you can hire somebody else to work on it, they may take 3 days or a week just to understand what's going on. And you have to pay for that.
I just made that point. Also, I've done consulting in software for, 7-8 years now. Then you can go to a consultant and say, write a spec. That's a perfectly reasonable project. And you can farm that spec out to another consulting firm or another independent consultant, whatever you want to do. But just writing the spec can be just a project for them. And you can go that route. That way you get the spec first. You get an idea of what the person is going to write, and then you can go and say, okay, that sounds good. Sounds like you have an idea what you're going to do. Go ahead and implement it. Or you can say, well, I don't want you to implement it. I got these guys who are cheaper to implement it, which is perfectly reasonable from everyone's point of view. Or you can say, I don't like your spec, and then you give it to some other guy who can refine it better.
So let's ask the panel, who writes the specs for your projects? I mean, do you write them or do
Actually, he brought up both the very interesting points. One was about the spec, second was about the quality of code. I would probably take it one more step further is about the documentation which is involved in the development of the project. Because we work with a lot of early stage companies where they're just in the idea or inception stage. So we come across this situation all the time that I have this idea, I'm not a technology person, help me build it. So what we do is we start working with them right at the stage where we start with the interviewing of the person and try to pick on their brains to put up a specification document. Now, mature companies like us, we have standard templates which we follow and the standard processes which we follow in terms of what type of questions to ask, what are the things that the user may not or the person who is trying to get the product built may have overlooked. So we know those kind of nuances and we try to ask those questions upfront. Second step that we do is once that is done, then what she mentioned, we come up with wireframes as well as just graphic prototypes to validate that whatever we have put together is that in line with what the user is looking at. So it doesn't happen that when you get the final product, it's totally a disconnect between what you wanted and what you are getting back. And the quality of code, if you look at a lot of code which people have got developed over these websites like Elance and Odesk, you would find that there is zero commenting in the code. The code is not tight at all. Just as you mentioned, just because it works doesn't mean that it follows good coding standards. So you need to make sure that it's.
So how as a non-technical entrepreneur are you to know whether somebody's building good code or not?
You see, use someone who does code insurance.
The problem is what you're talking about is someone non-technical startup is trusting you with producing good code. They're not going to know whether the code comes out nice or not. And other people have brought up points about hiring a middleman to write the functional spec. It's a good idea, it's a good investment if you can't afford to bring a developer on full-time on your staff or hire a consultant locally. It's not as much of a commitment for a local person to look over the code than as it is to actually write it. Have them write the functional spec. Have them make sure that the quality of code that's being produced is up to par and step in if it's not. If, for example, you're outsourcing and all of a sudden the communication barrier breaks, what do? You're screwed. You're 3 months into your project, the guy up and left, the code is crap, and you're stuck. It may help to have someone who's had a second set of eyes, like when you go to the doctor, you get a second opinion, have a second set of eyes over your code that's not responsible for writing the code, but is responsible for handing it off and making sure that it's okay. It's not as expensive as actually giving out the project to a firm to write it, but it may be worth the investment.
Is that person remote also, or do they have to be local?
I would suggest it be local, but I mean, it could be anything
you trust.
Yeah.
You want the code someone validated, right?
Yeah, it's someone who can look at code and give you an honest opinion. And someone here asked, well, should they be someone should they have connections to outsourcing firms?
How about
probably not?
Before you establish the relationship, ask them a simple question: do you have procedures? What are the procedures you follow? That's one criteria. If they say, "Oh, we're gonna do whatever you want to do," that's a pretty good bad sign.
You wouldn't want to pick somebody to do that quality assurance on your code that knows the firm that you're working with, because you want a non-biased opinion to come in and basically say this is not good or it's good. And if it turns out to be great code, and you think, oh, I wasted the money. Well, look at the reverse. If it turned out not to be good, is it worth risking your idea and having to start all over and waste all that money? Give a little investment.
At that point, let's say someone's working on your code in 2 weeks and code's great, code starts to be shady, and it's just garbage code. What do you guys do? Were you gonna tell them stop? The guy already lost his money. Right.
Well,
they already lost his time.
So the point is, if you have someone watching your code, or you pick how often. A week, 2 week iteration. Right. Someone here mentioned, well, you write the full spec and you give it out. Right? That's the waterfall approach in software engineering. Follow more of an agile approach. You can change quicker. So if you're, say it's 1 week, as the code's going, you only lose a week at max if that's your set time frame. So yeah, at that point I would say, don't use these people, find someone else.
If it's something that's more economically feasible, just to finish bad code and get the website up and running.
Yeah, but I think but then you have to remember that's penny wise, pound foolish. Your brand website that you love.
If you have an advertising campaign, and most of you guys here are doing e-commerce and some sort of it, and your advertising campaign is making you, you're spending $500 a day and $30,000 a month, or $50,000 a month, you're screwed. You need that code done, and you need it done right. So code insurance doesn't really work. Odds are you hire somebody at $10 an hour from an incubator, and you keep them on staff and make just him verify. Just use it to verify code, and that's really cheap.
That's definitely a possibility. You know,
that's a good idea. Well, what's your take on offering that as a service?
Yeah, because I was going to raise a question, because the whole idea about outsourcing is saving money. If you have to hire somebody to verify your code and some other team to do this, that, it's going to build up the bill, you know? So that's lose the whole idea of outsourcing.
Yeah,
so.
but you start with the wrong perspective. You outsource because you need somebody to help you with the skills that you don't have.
Correct.
You're
well, yeah, that's one of the that's one of the reasons. But
just,
the other
just for
reason
the money, it's a better approach.
Yeah.
Sorry, just hold on, one thing just to follow up on that. So outsourcing is not necessarily about saving money. You know, it could actually just be finding resources. So does everyone just want to give a quick perspective from the panel on just?
Sure. I think I couldn't agree more with that point. It goes back to the point I brought up before. You don't go in there just. Outsourcing doesn't mean it just gets done. It means that you need to think about what needs to get done. You need to invest the time up front to lay it out properly, and then you need to go find the right people to do it. And the reason you're doing that is so that you can do something else with your time while you're doing it. Because your time, arguably, is worth more than what you're paying. You don't go find the cheapest provider just because you're trying to save money. It just, in the long run, it makes zero sense financially.
Since you're in it, like, nuts and bolts, can you just give us some ballpark of prices of how the costs were structured, what you went through? We don't need to know exact numbers, but like ballpark of like how you're charged from doing without
You mean in terms of how I've paid individuals to do work?
Yeah, like you've got your VA in Israel, and then
those are done. All of my VA stuff is done on a monthly retainer, and it's somewhere in the range of about $250 to $300 a month right now. It started out as just $50 a month, and then it went up from there. And then I got a VA that had a university degree. What we're doing here with outsourcing and all, there's a certain measure of faith that we have to operate with. Because, I mean, without that, I mean, I understand from a coder perspective, from a software perspective, a lot of you guys are very technical. You look at things, it's all ones and zeros. And everything is clear in black and white, but unfortunately in this world of outsourcing, everything isn't in black and white, as much as we'd like it to be, and we'd like clear-cut answers and clear-cut solutions to problems that we're working on, but it's not always the case. But I've just learned that you have to have a certain amount of patience, you have to have some faith, and then you've got to have a second pair of eyes that can help you out with the process to get it going.
Anyway, Tess,
I'm sorry.
It's about the VA stuff. Have you blogged about this, or do you have resources? Because some friends of mine have ventured into it. It's good. I'm going to tell them, you went through 5 of them to find your great one.
Oh yeah.
But have you blogged about it? And the type of things you can and can't outsource, and I think about the person I need needs to be running around New York City generally.
Right.
But I'm sure a lot of my life could be used up. Have you resources there?
I've talked about it a little bit. There was a little blurb that I put on Tim Ferriss's blog, and if you go back to Business Week from July, it was the July 7th issue of Business Week. There's a whole article that we're featured in talking about specifically some of the benefits of outsourcing and specifically the VA. But I use them from everything to ordering gifts to booking travel. And again, I use a spreadsheet that very clearly lists out the things that need to be done. in the order that they need to be done, and there's a whole bunch of check-offs so to make sure if there's anything that they're not clear on, they're always to check back with me before they make the next step, and it's worked perfectly.
That article is linked on the Ultralight website on your bio, so if you want to read that, you go to the Ultralight website, click on that.
Do any other sorry,
I'm sorry?
Do you think you could be turned into like an executive assistant for a company?
Oh, most definitely, most definitely, most definitely.
Do any of the other panelists have anything written that you want to promote in terms of publications or blogs or feedback that's relevant for links for the audience?
Actually, check out virtualassistant.com. I think that's what it is. It actually has certified VAs, so there's a little bit more of an extra check system. So they go through a certification process, they're trained, you pay a little bit more, and they're all US based. But they live in, like, they're like mothers or like housewives in different parts of the country.
Yeah, you can't, I mean, the thing about it is you can't outsource everything outside of the States. Like, I use a VA for real estate stuff, but I can't send that to India for, I mean, it's just, or anywhere else for that matter. I use a trained real estate agent out of Virginia that's familiar with Massachusetts laws to handle some real estate related stuff for me. And essentially, I get them for maybe $20 an hour, and they save me about 25 to 30 hours a week just for that. But that's just one thing that you can't outsource outside, just because there's a lot lost in translation there, and there's just, well, you've got legal issues that you want to avoid too. So, you know.
Also time lag communication.
Exactly.
You know, if they can't get in touch with people in America during working hours, then how are they going to do their work necessarily?
Yeah, they're not.
Incidentally, the guy who wrote the 4-Hour Workweek has a very extensive blog, and he has a number of posts that outline step by step how he outsourced everything from like email answering to. It's a great.
Of course, they're hearing this, but they're like.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the link to that blog post, I think it's awesome. You just email me and I'll send you the link.
So there's a question down the back there.
Is there a separate category for the VA?
There is now. There wasn't when I first started using them. There is now. And let me say this about Elance, because I don't want to. I mean, I've kind of turned into a mini spokesperson for them lately in the past few months. I really enjoy using them. I've used Odesk. I've used some others. To me, Elance is like the marketplace of everything because they offer a little bit of everything. But I know some of you guys that are real focused on a certain type of work that you need done, and maybe Elance isn't the best site to go to for that type of work. But I mean, I like Elance just because it's a little bit of everything. But their NDAs, I would highly recommend that you have your own attorney vet those because their NDAs could be a lot stronger than they are. A lot of the boilerplate stuff that they offer on their site could be beefed up from a legal standpoint. So I would encourage you to look beyond what they offer. It's a great community, it's a great resource, but just, make sure you do your homework as far as that's concerned. And I learned that the hard way around the first time around with the NDA I was using, and now I've got a much stronger NDA that I use that did not come from Elance, and just a point of reference.
So did you hire some attorney to write the
Yes.
NDAs for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I mean, I gave him the NDA. Well, I mean, I didn't reinvent the wheel. I gave him the NDA that Elance had, and I said, do you see any holes in this? Do you see any problems with this? And sure, of course, there were problems with it. So.
Just, you guys are talking a lot about outsourcing, but one thing that hasn't really been mentioned, or the words haven't been mentioned, you guys, is project management. Do you guys have any advice for software or any advice for project management, to control the time scheduling, and as well as just making sure your days are busy. You might lose yourself in your own schedule and then get mad at them for not hitting their schedule when you in fact didn't tell them you had 2 weeks. It wasn't in paper. It's an Excel spreadsheet. That's great, but
You should try using like these project management software tools and create milestones. Active Collab, Zoho has things that you can use as free if you're want to use it as a smaller project.
Basecamp.
And Basecamp. But basically, you can set milestones. You can see how much of the project is completed, and if you put the entire project in there, you can pretty much.
And they communicate pretty well with milestones. That they understand the whole concept of project management software in terms of outsourcing. You can say, I'm going to use.
They may not have used it before, but they're very easy to use. So.
Another important, I think, issue is how you approach product development.
a lot of entrepreneurs are very excited about building all the product, all the bells and whistles. It's a recipe for disaster. Please focus on the bare foundation of the product and then build from there. So it's much more of an agile kind of development process. And here you don't go through a classification that's going to be very lengthy, full of scripts, and that's recipe for screwing up the whole building. Just start the first floor and then build from there, I think. And I'm wondering how it works with outsourcing companies, because with agile development, you need more communication and face-to-face is a little bit better. So it's a question to you. I mean,
actually, there are a lot of other tools that one could use, while doing product development using offshore. Face-to-face communication definitely one would prefer, but is prohibitively expensive. That's why people. Sorry.
Skype.
Yeah, that's what I was coming to. That you could use a lot of tools like Skype. Then there is WebEx. Then you've got GoToMeeting and things like that, which one you can use, so that the collaboration is much better. You can actually see real time what a programmer is doing or how you would like to explain, just as if the person is sitting across the table with you. So leverage those open source tools which are available in abundance, and make that work. And he made a mention about whether the development process, whether it's a waterfall methodology, which is most of the people these days talk about using agile. I would say don't go gung-ho about agile. It may not be suitable for your project. Take a look at what is your project and then accordingly decide the software development methodology. If you're developing a simple website, agile is not the way to go. If you're developing a complex product, yes, sure, go ahead and embrace that. So it should be driven primarily based on what your needs are. Even for that matter, what type of project to outsource should be driven by the nature of the project. Somebody asked also a question about what are the costings and what are the type of projects which are being outsourced on Elance. As a matter of fact, even attorney services are available via Elance. And if you take a look at the Elance's homepage, there is a small video which I checked out last night, and it promotes that the message is very simple. Something very simple if you want to get built, right from the stage, logo design, copywriting, rather the content writing for your website, doing the programming, and doing the search engine marketing. Those are the things which they themselves are promoting. Somebody asked the questions as to what are the pricing. As a matter of fact, last night I pulled up your article which was in Business Week, mom and pop multinationals, and some interesting data which I found, which I thought might be of interest to you, is the type of pricing which is being offered. Randy and his wife paid $300 to Indian designer for the logo, $125 for another logo, which he says would have costed $1,000 here, $500 for homepage design work. So you're seeing the size of the project which essentially people are talking at. And in terms of the hourly rates, it is also mentioned that some company charged $8 an hour. So those are the type of rates which you're looking at, essentially for not that high-end development work which you would want to get done. If you're looking at getting a product development into a product development kind of a scenario, look for a more serious company which is going to be around. The longevity is there. It's not like, as a lot of people mentioned, the company is not going to be around tomorrow, or somebody just decides to take up a full-time job and your product is in limbo.
Right.
So take a look at that.
What I'd like to do is, it sounds like you guys have all been involved with some big...
Going to be around. The longevity is there. It's not like, as a lot of people mentioned, the company is not going to be around tomorrow, or somebody just decides to take up a full-time job and your product is in limbo.
Right.
So take a look at that.
What I'd like to do is, it sounds like you guys have all been involved with some big outsourcing projects before. I would be interested in as much detail as you're comfortable with, telling about one specifically that didn't go well or that went off the rails somehow, and what you could have done or what somebody could have done, what could have been done to prevent that, to fix it. I don't know if everybody could give an answer to that question. I would really be interested.
So just before we start, we're going to try and wrap up around 9:30. I think was the target. So we'll just get some feedback on that from the panelists, and then we'll have an official wrap up. And we are actually going to an event around the corner.
Right.
Mustang's around the
Mustang
corner.
areas, yeah.
So we can continue the discussion there. Do you want to, Yao? Do you want to kick off?
Half our projects are from screw-ups from offshoring. People find us and we fix everything with a smaller budget. The biggest mess up was this one fellow who helped raise $2 million afterwards, but he spent 3 years and $500,000 offshoring to a country in Asia and came to us with almost nothing left. We were able to do the entire project in 3 months for $50,000 as a phase one. Probably not everything he wanted, but it got him enough to get the fundraising and then building out the rest of it. So there's also phasing out and building what you need to get funding as well. More recently, a project that the guy spent $50,000 in 3 years, figured a way to do it for $20,000, doubling the amount of functionality. So just because it's US based, just because the hourly rate may be more, it actually may be done faster, maybe producing a better product. Especially if it's your first go around, you're dumping your life savings into something for a new startup, you're trying to go raise funding for. Fundraising with a broken product is not going to be so hot these days. In 2008, when everything is, Web 2.0, great features, a lot of AJAX, you have to be competitive too. So I want to think about that, and also time to market's important.
So what did you do specifically to fix the broken project?
We threw it away, built it over.
You just started. Okay, so what did you do differently than what the old guys were doing?
We did it right.
You just
Bad code. There was bad code. They were just laying things on top of each other. Basically, we brought on to kind of help project manage initially. We'd hand over files and say, build it. And they said, it's not possible. Impossible. 3 weeks of impossible. So I just, oh my God, it's like, what, just for free. Just do it. Do this. Build this one page for them and show them it can be done. Built it in an hour. Handed it over. The entrepreneur was pissed. And so eventually we shoved them aside and just built it correctly. And honestly, a lot of the things you guys want to do has already been done. And if you're smart about it, doing mashups, taking some APIs so you don't have to reinvent code is also a very clever way to go about things. And oftentimes a lot of these programmers, they may not be familiar with a lot of the opportunities that we may see regularly because we're just involved in that world. So they tend to want to build everything from scratch. And that's fine for certain situations if you have a lot of customizations, it's a very unique idea. But if you're doing anything like social networking, Web 2.0, there's a lot of resources out there, open source, that you can just utilize and cut development time down.
So, follow-up, a project that went off the rails, and what could have been done to fix it?
Actually, since it's an incubator, we got to take care of both our tenant and the students. So there've been cases where both ways. For example, our priorities for students as well to make sure that they're not overused or they're not abused for some reasons. So there've been cases of people are outsourcing to these students, making them work 60 hours a week and getting them to fill up timesheets for 35 hours, which is not fair. So on the one hand, we have major problems with entrepreneurs who try to take advantage of the situation more than anything else. But from our outsourcing perspective, from the other side, of course, since these are students, there have been cases of they're just goofing off and not doing the job sometimes, which is kind of unprofessional. But they're still students, so there's always a bit of a trade-off between the two. So there have been cases of students.
Is there a general approach to avoiding those kind of problems?
So the key thing there is to hire. The first person who the company hires, we try to recommend a doctoral student or a professor who will kind of take charge of the project, and then they have students working under them. So that's the approach we are following right now. It's a mature, high-level student on top, and then there are other students who are kind of reporting to him. So it's a reporting structure, again, the whole thing of a manager, of a PM.
So having a manager is important.
Correct, yeah. Or faculty.
Okay.
Sure, let me give you 2 examples of projects that were failed, which we took over and turned them around. One project, it was a social networking site being built for some students from Princeton University. They raised a considerable amount of money, started off building with a local company in the US, very soon lost patience, jumped over and picked up a large Indian outsourcing company, tried them for some more time, didn't work, and then finally ran into me at one of these conferences, and then we started working with them and turned it around for them. Lessons from that particular case as to what went wrong essentially is too much money too early, trying to not keep a watch on the burn rate. So keep a close watch from what you have and how much you can spend, and actually are you getting the value out of the money that you're spending. Just don't go after the big brand names. Look for a company which is the right size for you, who still has the capability to deliver the right kind of product. So because if you go to too large an outsourcer, you're essentially nobody whom they would actually pay attention to. That's exactly what happened with these people, young students, and the company didn't take them seriously, and the project didn't go anywhere. Second, you had some question?
Well, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second scenario was of a company based out here in Connecticut. Again, started working with a company locally in the U.S. and for some reason the relationship between them went sour, and they came to us to do the project, take the project forward. What we realized: zero documentation, no commenting in the code whatsoever. So that's where we also had a tough time trying to figure the things out and then bring it back to shape. So I would encourage that whenever whoever you're outsourcing with, demand documents. Make sure that each step is followed. You get the specifications, get the test plans and everything, and keep a watch on how the project is being developed.
So Javier, do you want to chime in to?
Sure. I mean, I'll comment on
gripe?
two things very quickly. The biggest gripe was the first one because, as you said, project management. We're never in touch with them. We'll see you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, it shows up and it's a disaster. Don't do that every day or until you get comfortable with who you're working with. The other piece is something that Yao mentioned before, is sometimes it is worth it, especially at the very beginning, to ask around locally to see if there's an existing application. And combining different applications will save you time and money. And we spent 2 months specking out this beautiful machine that was already existing here. So don't do that.
So Randy, I think you've shared some of your experiences. Do you want to finish with the biggest gripe?
Asking a VA to book some travel for my family and I, and having them book us all on separate flights. I wanted the absolute lowest price, but I didn't want my 15-month-old traveling down to Florida by himself. Clearly that was a major hassle, and having to explain that to Delta Airlines why I wanted to get a refund so I could get the correct tickets was even a bigger pain. And outside of that, hiring somebody from they were from somewhere in Eastern Europe, and they wanted to have them do some basic website design work, and I made the mistake of fronting too much money up front through Elance, and basically got a whole lot of gobbledygook, and when I tried to really reach out to them, it just didn't work out. That was early on in my experience. Now I always check all references before I do anything, and so suffice to say, I don't send any money out, and the Elance escrow works really, really well, which is nice because that allows you to put the money in a holding position until you've actually gotten a deliverable in your hand, and then you can release the money when you're satisfied with what you have. And if you get someone that doesn't want to agree to Elance escrow, I wouldn't work with them, because then that means that there may be some shady business going on. And trust me, and all of us in our startup phases, we don't have money to burn. So
anyway, we're a bit pressed for time, so we'll close up there for official questions. Just want to thank all the panelists for being here tonight. And also a special thanks to Yao. This is we actually outgrew our last location. We had 45 people and it was too